By the way, no one's ever asked me to have an orgasm for science. And if
It's
anything, it's like
terrible.
the opposite. They take it's like the pain machine
It's
in
the
Princess
opposite.
Bride. They take orgasms off your life.
Welcome to Not Right Now, the podcast about parenting through all of this.
How's your bracket?
It's a great question. I don't know. I did a terrible job of sharing and promoting these things this year. Usually I do a much better job. I haven't even looked at it. I made them for my kids. They're going to be mad because it's not going to be what they wanted. I don't fucking care. Let's look live. How's yours?
I have two. By accident, I had the online one that I did with you, and it's slightly different from the printed out one. Busted UNC, obviously. I love, honestly, when a top seed goes down early. It is pretty fun. So Wisconsin, all my Wisconsin friends were really mad about wherever High Point is. I presume it's in Colorado. Where would High Point be? Somewhere out of mountain.
I was really, the only thing I got to see yesterday was a brief period where Sienna was still leading Duke, and then Duke took over, and I was so fucking mad. I knew it was inevitable, but God, the whole country could have been united, Claire.
Yeah, I know. I did not. I hate Duke because they didn't let me in. I wouldn't have gone to school there probably anyway, but I still hate them. Yeah, I go on vibes a lot. Let's see, SLU. I picked SLU because my friend works there. I favor Big Ten teams just because I always like Gonzaga because I feel like Gonzaga only exists in the Big Ten. I mean, in the NCAA tournament, but not for anything else. And any goal with a Z in the name, I tend to be favorable towards.
I feel like when we were younger, Gonzaga was like the Cinderella team, and now it's expected.
Yeah.
I'm still holding on to that.
There's so many just weird vibes, like where I'll be like, well, my college ex-boyfriend's family all rooted for Kansas, and it would be dumb to pick Kansas to go out early. But based on my wishes, I want them to go out, in this round, so they can really get their heart broken. But
Correct.
I had UConn going all the way because I saw an article that was like, or maybe I heard an NPR. It was like UConn is the team, and I'm like, all right, I'm great.
I want to be specific. Are we talking about our men's or women's brackets, Claire?
I didn't do women's.
You're just a fucking monster. This is the whole thing. God damn it.
It's not real. No one cares. I'm just kidding.
But who watches women's sports? I have 7 different variations. I got Charlotte. Everybody watches women's volleyball. Come on.
Okay. Well, with all these men playing women's sports, it's just been ruined. So
Oh, God, Jesus Christ, you're the worst. Anyways, well, I have Arizona going all the way in the men's for some inexplicable reason. And women, I've got North Carolina winning it.
Okay. I don't know. I just didn't want to muddy the waters. We literally have at least 12 brackets floating around the house. The boys will do more than one. And, Steve printed up a couple, but he didn't print them up right. So, and then this morning, I need to get Paul to give me props because I saved James's life because James came down and he was going to update Paul's for him. And I was like, if you value your life, I would not touch Paul's bracket if I were you. And listen. But, it starts off fun, and then all of a sudden James can't sleep because he needs to know how Michigan did. And then I'm sitting next to Paul, and while he's doing his homework, refreshing his ESPN bracket. By the way, his teacher started a bracket. This is like an annual thing. I don't know why.
So this is where I want to get into things a little bit.
No, yeah. First of all, this is like boner city for him, right? Because it is like gambling. I don't believe he's put money into it, but it is such a big boy thing to do to make these kind of predictions and to have this kind of clout, and it is more gamified now. I don't know if it's on ESPN, but whatever app he's on, if you refresh it and you win a game, there's like some animation where all these, I don't know what it was, basketballs or chips all cascade down. But yesterday, he said, can I go to my friend's house? And I said, do you have homework? And he said, no. And I said, let's open up your Google Classroom and take a look. Guess what? He had an hour of homework to do.
Who? I didn't know that. How dare you? How could he have possibly kept track of that?
Yeah. And then I sat next to him on the couch, and I'm glad I did, to make sure he stayed on task because I saw him navigating over to his ESPN tab and refreshing it. And that's very normal and human. We all do that, except there are no games going on at that time. So I was like, what the hell are you? What do you think is going to happen? I'm glad. And like without them, I'd be like, I wish every day was March Madness. And I'm like, thank God they take days off so we can just move on from this. But yes, go ahead. What was your thesis or what's your.
No, I don't think there's no thesis besides like this thing used it. Look, was it always innocent? No, of course not. When I was at ESPN, we would spend months getting ready for this because at that time, which is 1,000 years ago, before phones with screens, between Sunday when the brackets would be filled and Thursday tip off at whatever it is, 1 Eastern, what it used to be. Now, of course, there's games Wednesday, whatever. The amount of visitors we would have to the game back, again, this is before Reddit. This is before was one of the top 5 sites in the world for 4 days. And the money on the line was crazy. So again, never been innocent. For most people, office fucking brackets, whatever this or that, and your kids kind of knew and they watch some games, but they're mostly on while they're at school until it's the weekend games. It's so bad now. I mean, it's one of those, can we have nice things? And the answer is obviously not. We've ruined everything. You want to be able to have nice things. Like, again, I made some for my kids. They can print it up, this and this, but I'm also very aware that, I mean, literally this week, like 2 days ago, baseball signed a deal with, I think, Polymarket, probably. Journalists are being offered deals with prediction markets.
Sure.
It's like probably a worse version of crypto from a few years ago because it's even more than stock trading. It is outcome based and influences your behavior and does your decision making. And it's crazy. And look, of course, is it fun to put a couple bucks on a horse here and there? Sure. Well, here's things we know about specifically American men. It doesn't stop there. I mean, what did I say in that last show, that tweet? It was like, all the women are reading for a personal pan pizza and all the men owe $5,000 to DraftKings. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's frustrating and yet inevitable. And then frustrating again to have something like this come up that is such a like cultural ritual that for once doesn't have anything to do with the NFL. It's like NFL light. And have it be completely ruined because we have made the slide as slippery as, Clark Griswold with his, fucking thing in Winter Vacation. I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it does combine something that is just, I think, like inherently sticky, which is we all like to make predictions and that's just fun, even without gambling. And especially, I think we all love the Cinderella story and the vibes of it all. You can go so many different ways. A long time ago on my website, like I did a March Madness where I graded everyone based on whose uniforms were cuter. And then I had a winner of who had the cutest uniform in NCAA. I've done a bracket once a long time ago on pasta shapes. And I have one up today on Evil Witches of worst places our babies have grown up.
Great post. Everybody should check that.
Thank you. I spent so long on this one site trying to make this bracket work, and it was like just impossible to navigate. And then I kind of fucked around on Figma and but they made it so easy. But there's something, again, if you're not even putting money in it, there's just something so fun about making choices and just, narrowing things down like that. But it is, I don't know what to say about the gambling thing. You guys did that. I don't know who let that through.
It started in a couple places. It was like, it was New Jersey and Vegas for a long time. And then it started to be other places. And then, these places started to creep in, and then they were allowed on the phones, and then they were allowed in every state, and then you could gamble on the things in the state, and now it's everywhere. And again, then you're like, oh, but every kid has a phone. And they're like, yeah, but you got to be 18. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
And then you go, okay, is it okay as teacher made a bracket? Right. That does seem fun. And again, the comparing everything is super fun. When I was at ESPN, I remember people coming we would talk all the time. What else can we compare? Like, obviously movies we would start with. You see the candy ones all the time, like all this different shit, right? And I remember people coming in, and again, 1,000 years ago, and they would try to sell us on like some software they made where you can make a bracket for anything. And we're like, oh, our users will love this. And now, again, you can do that. It's not new, that idea anymore. What's different is that every man owes $5,000 to DraftKings.
No,
that's beyond the Polymarket thing is fucking crazy. It went from, does it diminish the game that you can bet whether a wide receiver gets a catch this quarter and that's a thing and that you chose that thing? Okay. We're so far fucking past that now.
No.
Now does he mention climate change in his speech? And what does that mean?
I was showing James or Paul, maybe it was Paul, I think it's Paul, but there's some athlete, and it doesn't even matter what sport it was, but the athlete was saying that it's part of the job now to endure death threats, basically, and all kinds of blowback because of whatever you do, whether you do well or fail, you lost someone money. And they're like, that's part of it now. And I was like, no mother wouldn't want that for their child to be, I mean, maybe a father too, but also, you're like, that is insane. And that you shouldn't have to put up with, that shouldn't be in your head.
Yeah, and we facilitated the very light version of that, which was fantasy sports, which again, like most people do not do for money. And it's again, I've always argued like the fantasy sports were just the vehicle mostly for pre-existing groups,
Oh,
the cliches like fraternity brothers or offices or whatever. They already existed. This just gave them something to kind of talk about. And sometimes there was money and sometimes there was not. And you would hear from players, they would come to the office talking about like, oh, do you have your own fantasy team? This or that. And a lot of them did not. And part of that was because one, they were uncomfortable with it, of the Pete Rose of the whole thing, or two, because at the time there were lawsuits about whether fantasy sports was a game of skill or a game of luck. And it got decided, I don't even remember what level of court, but it was up there that that is a game of skill. So it wasn't gambling. And now it doesn't matter because it's just fucking gambling. Everything's just gambling. Fantasy sports is like for babies. So yeah, I don't know.
Well,
it's just a bummer.
it's also a thing for guys in particular. And I don't know if you watch the doc I was going to talk about, but it's more about the article as well. But I think there's something interesting I'll lead into about the way men bond over it. And also there's a little bit of pick me girl to it as well. Like this teacher that did the brackets, she's a female teacher, and that's neither here nor there, but she's also the teacher that Paul has had the worst grades in because he's always forgotten to turn in the work. I cannot raise a ruckus over this thing that is so fun, and it's nice that she does it for the kids. But I'm like, why don't you focus on making them finish in their work first before you add in this whole thing that's going to keep them from doing it? But it's a way that guys talk to each other. I think my first conscious memory of March Madness was on a ski trip in high school, and we were in Sun Valley or wherever the hell, no, whatever, doesn't matter. And the guys were watching, I think, Tennessee play basketball on TV in the restaurant there. And I was like, why would you, a boy from Illinois, care about watching Tennessee play? And you realize there's so much more to it. And there's culture, this thing to bond over. It's like binge viewing before we had streaming TV, basically. I've heard that, I don't know about if you've heard this, that apparently a lot of doctors, urologists, will do specials during March Madness so that guys can
the peak is crazy. The peak, you have to time it exactly right because the days you're supposed to be on the couch. Oh yeah, it's huge. Did I tell you how I offered to get a vasectomy and was told no?
No, I couldn't remember if you had gotten a vasectomy or not, and why.
I offered a few years. It's been a while now. I think my wife had the fear of what if we need one more. I'm like, to be clear, we don't need one more. We even have one on ice, but. Yeah, it was interesting. I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, I'm offering to do the thing.
We used to do it anyway. The vasectomies for all is what I say, for all men. Especially, there should be an age cap. You should be, I would say 40, at age 45, all men should get vasectomy.
100%. Should it be required?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is the first step on the road back to, reparations. I mean, it's not even close, but it'll better than nothing. So I was
100%.
so nice when he was recovering from and to be clear, to be fair, and I believe some men sometimes, it wasn't just a day or a weekend. He took a week, I think, and hurt. And I saw the stitches. I was like, bro, that is, that's real. But again, a week compared to millennia of oppression. I got mad about the mental load, pun semi-intended, but you have to show twice that you have no guys left behind.
Oh, that's a really great point. Well done.
Thank you. But Steve felt embarrassed about going down to the doctor and providing evidence of that. And I was so mad because I was like, I understand and theoretically why that would suck, but I can't even go into just the moment when they were checking my cervix for the first time and I got fisted by this doctor who I did twice, and with no meds and no warning. Right. I'm like, and I was just mad at him because he was like, the nurses know what I'm there for. I'm like, nurses know the people who are dying. People nurses clean up shit off the floor. You think that you giving them a cup I was just so mad.
They don't give a fuck. They don't give a
No.
fuck. They want you.
Get over yourself. Yeah.
The number of times I had to jerk off in a closet for IVF, like at this doctor's office, they were like, step into the closet. I was like, oh, is it the one down the hall and hang a left to hang a left? They're like, no, it's right here. It's like when you go to a restaurant and the bathroom is like next to your table and you're like, God, it couldn't be a little fucking farther away. Like the whole restaurant knows I'm in there. It's right here. You get over it real quick, you know?
Yeah. By the way, no one's ever asked me to have an orgasm for science. And if anything, it's like
terrible.
the opposite. You know, it's like the pain machine.
It's the opposite.
Bride. They take orgasms off your life. Like,
Every time your cervix gets fisted, it takes an orgasm off your life. Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, it's, oh my God. Yeah. No, I get it.
I mean, to be fair, I guess, and not to blame things on men all the time, but this is sort of a tie into something we were talking about earlier this week, is that I enjoy sports, but I also have I don't know if enjoyed is the right word, but I feel like, they are a way to relate to men sometimes. That is not, again, the in on it, but I feel like there's guy friends I've made because I talk about sports or we'll go to a game together or, whatever it is. And you showed me this article in New York Magazine about women fleeing like MAGA, basically, like escaping it. And you sent it to me wanting to talk about it. And I had some thoughts about it, but I was curious, like, what stood out to you about that piece and like why you wanted to chat about it.
Again, it's both completely evergreen, women leaving the church, pick a church, women, like the cults. I mean, it's a fucking tale as old as time, right? But at the same time, it's also incredibly timely.
Yeah.
Because where the two biggest voting blocks for Trump are white women and young white men, both times. And I don't know, it's very easy to react to it and go, yeah, what the fuck did you think was it? This was, it's like people going, Joe Rogan surprised at the immigration and war. And you're like, it's very easy to be correct and justified and annoying on your high horse. As much as we have been banning and burning books and people for a very long time as far as censorship goes and being terrified of ideas, mostly women, while dudes get to diddle whoever they want, anytime they want. And it's the same with disinformation. However many pamphlets you want to talk about, or just religious shit that's gotten people killed through the Crusades, whatever it might be. But there's never been a saturation of dis and misinformation that is so specifically, whether it started with your Cambridge Analytical shit or whatever, that is so specifically targeted to you all day that it's almost surprising that they would leave at some points. Because my point is, like, to escape it, just the information vacuum, much less like the power system, which is at home in every part of your reach, I think is actually, I don't want to say like impressive, just logistically is difficult to do. And in a world of, it's going to take all of us to turn the ship around as much as we can. Great. But I don't know. I try to come back to these fundamental parts of it. But then again, like in the not right now of all of it going, just like, then you watch the Manosphere stuff, right? And you go, meanwhile, here's how it's going on the rest of the internet.
I thought did you happen to watch that documentary I was telling you?
I've watched parts of it.
Okay.
No, I haven't watched
All
it.
right. It's, for people who don't know what I'm talking about, it's Louis Theroux. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correct, but Louis Theroux Inside the Manosphere at Netflix.
Yeah.
And I actually think these two pieces were really interesting hand-in-hand pieces. But regarding the article, we'll link to both of these, I presume, in the show notes. But the article stood out to me in that the women interviewed were young women, right? And they were very online. So they're not talking to women who've been baked and, put some time, mileage on their bodies or given birth or taking care of an elderly person. And what is the phrase? The pick me girl of it all stood out to me. Are you familiar with this kind of, or as they say it on Reddit or whatever online, I'm not like the other girls, which is a way women who feel like they don't fit into a certain mold that they differentiate themselves. So these girls talk about basically being like, it gave me like a little tingle to be edgy, and to go against the grain. And the grain for them is, progressivism in this time when they're young.
The lecturing, the wokeism, progressivism that we've been doing for 10 years, which they've grown up in again.
Right. Which is like very interesting to me on its own, because I think it makes me think about what I fear for my kids. Like my boys, basically, specifically, which is an inability to separate online discourse from the real world. So, like in my town, which is really progressive, there was a lot of infighting around COVID, especially around, Black Lives Matter in public schools. And there's a lot of finger pointing and basically like a lot of well-meaning people online being told that they were white supremacists or racist. And it was like very out of control, out of pocket. But I feel like the winners were not the ones who could be passed as being acceptable. The winners were the people who could be like, this is an online discourse and this is not related to like my real, or being like, I'm not going to get involved in this, or I'm not going to take it personally if some random heated person online is going to accuse me of this. And that's hard when your kids are involved and the school is involved and we're all like on edge. But then there are a couple people I know, neighbors who like really internalize that. And they think, oh, people in Evanston think white men are shit, basically. Or, and you're like, that's a bummer that you can't sort out sort of this one discussion from how you think you are truly perceived, and then your reaction is anger at how you're perceived rather than doing anything else about the circumstances or your own self. So anyway, I lost the thread on that, but
No, so much of it was justified and so much of it was overboard and caused so much infighting and just lecturing and shit like that, you know, again, they grew up on there. They were entirely online for a couple of years because online was becoming more prevalent. Because, and in parallel to the pandemic, again, all the fundamental things of young boys and girls like basically don't hang out anymore, things like that. But there's a line in a piece that again, it's so timely and so fucking evergreen. It was something like sexism was like the price of entry to the quote unquote party, but also literally the party. But actually that was like the theme of it. But, and again, on the one hand, I'm like, it always has been like forever. Like trad life is not a trend.
yeah.
That's what they would prefer. That's the
Yeah.
way it was. They would love it to go back to that. So on the one hand, you're like, how did you not know that?
Yeah.
But I think there was some pushing against the, again, substitute progressivism for, what did they say? Yelling at them, telling their playlist wasn't woke enough or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, we all went to college when the fucking R. Kelly songs were the songs you danced to. I get it.
Right.
But there's it's like the whole, how can you separate Woody Allen from his movies type of thing, right? So some of that wokeism is easier than others.
Well, I guess to tie it back to the parenting thing, for me, I hope that my boys there's a couple of things that I think about. First of all, I hope that I wrote a piece that I never published called The Man Tax, which is I think that like all men should be able to absorb a little bit of criticism or like tomfoolery because they know like you have everything else. So you should be able to handle some jQuery or friend. And my hope is that like my boys can be like, they might see something online. You might see something that's like, why are all men should be born in prison and then prove their way out, which is a joke, but also kind of true. But I can tell the difference because I have to get off my computer and go be about in the world. And there's a million other things going on. But there are some people who like will read that and think that's what the world thinks of them and respond according to that. And so my hope for them is that they have well enough balanced diet of real life and online and understanding what their life really is, which is extremely privileged versus, and then if they encounter something like that, not taking it like a personal affront, and even better, being like, where did this come from? Exploring that discomfort, because usually, very often, that kind of discomfort is rooted in something true, and you have to understand it better. Because that's what I very much am concerned about, like for at least on that end of things.
It's all the things, right? I mean, they talked in the article about how for a lot of folks, not just young women, like the embrace of Nick Fuentes was like such a big part of it, where it's been around, but people were like overtly protecting him, and not just protecting him, but would go even further. And again, you can say that's a minority of the audience. Small fish and big fish. It's like there's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of like, where do people get their information, and at what part of their life do they get information?
Mm-hmm.
How rigorous is it in a world where everyone has a Substack and no one has an editor, much less the fact checker? But like the original, one of the again, pagan atheist religious scholar, and I did a lot of work on religious warfare, was like people who take the monotheistic religious texts literally, and those who take them as direction, and will admit that the Bible had a lot of different authors
Yeah.
and was written hundreds of years after. No one's saying that doesn't mean you shouldn't take the Good Samaritan part out of it, but you can pick it apart. Watch the West Wing episode about it, but apply that to every voice that these, again, forget the adults and quote on young women who are all the boomers who are Facebooked to the end. These young kids who are like, they literally don't have the synapses connections to make some of these fundamental, like, slow thinking. What's the book? Fast and Slow Thinking or whatever it is. They're not even like biologically capable of that.
Yeah.
And they're being inundated by this 24/7.
So I do want you to watch this Netflix doc, because something that is,
I will.
I think, an interesting parallel is that the documentarian follows a couple of these Manosphere people, and they all seem to have at least one sort of like pet woman, basically, who's like hot, and they will make a big point about being like telling her on camera to clean up, basically, and that's sort of a flex, like having this woman is like a Lamborghini, basically, But the documentarian goes deeper in this, and he talks to some of them a little bit more about, what are you doing this for? And he does talk to one of their moms, which is amazing at the very end. I don't want to give any spoilers, but these girls or these women, it's very interesting because like they explore how these guys both are like, I'm a pimp, look at me, but also they have this hatred of women and what they perceive to be what they would refer to as like whores, basically. And there is a real fine line between women who, I presume they're keeping them, they're paying them to be around and making their lives nice to clean up for them. But they also, that's fine. But a porn star is disgusting. And it is there's so many mixed messages. But these guys at the same time have this, I don't know how to explain it, this masculinity that to me is very babyish, boyish. It's sort of like what you said about Donald Trump. He's a poor man's idea of what a rich man is like. I feel like these guys are like what insecure men's idea of what masculinity is like. And I was like, this reminded me of Girls Gone Wild in college, because I was like, something is giving me a weird vibe here. And
by the way, like, you think you remember that shit? If you YouTube that or MTV Spring Break stuff and see some of the stuff, it's just like, holy shit. That was crazy.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I don't want to ever talk about how things were so much better when we were younger, because I remember that coming out when we were in college, and there was right around that time too that Sex and the City is ramping up. And so you got a lot of mixed messages about, if you want to empower yourself, it's not about feminism and studying, it's about sucking dick and having one night stands and feeling great about it. And, now on the other end of it, like, both things can be true, right? Like, you can have a really great sex life, but also you're allowed to have
positive.
surgery.
It's great.
Yeah.
But also, we don't need to do away with women's suffrage, no matter what fucking Pete Hesketh says.
Or you don't have to, it's okay now, I think, to say don't get blackout drunk, or try not to get blackout drunk, around shady men you don't know, or especially in another country. But I guess my point is, like, this sort of vulnerability is not new, especially as a woman, to be told by both sides. It is empowering to put yourself in front of these men, basically like this, and it is empowering to make these choices that like serve you up towards men. And then I don't know if I'm being very articulate, but I was like, this is not new for these young women I'm talking about, to think
No, of course.
put yourself at the mercy of these guys.
The point I think I was trying to make is, and I just found it, there's a line in here where they said, conservative blogger Rod Dreher has estimated around 30 to 40% of DC GOP staffers are under the age of 30 are Fuentes fans. Numbers are impossible to verify, et cetera, et cetera. X account reinstated by Musk, 1.2 million followers, nightly broadcasts on Rumble, more than 1 million views. There has never been like a 24/7 saturation of the people, young men, obviously also old men, but new generations of young men seeking to not just control these girls and young women, right? But like you said, dominion over them in this just fucked up way. And it's crazy. Again, you can watch this stuff and just go, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, if you watch the doc, you see these guys walking around, and then a lot of them they're very clownish. Again, like, to me, like, it's very swole, like they look uncomfortably muscly, and sheened and polished, and they look so dumb walking around like with their phone out all the time. Or, one of them keeps going to this like boxing punching bag at a boardwalk to see who's the strongest puncher. And you're like, what a dork. But then I think the thing that like breaks your heart is that you see all these children basically run up to them and be like, yo, you're so and so. Can I get a picture? And you're like, who the hell are these boys? Who let this happen? And, I think that's what strikes fear in you is you think I would never let my kid do that. And you're like, well, I don't know. My kid made fun of me yesterday for laughing too loud in the car because I embarrassed him. And there's some other way that my kids all, basically shit on me, in various ways. And you're like, is this happening? Is this for real? Or
Well, and again, because do you remember "Don't take Trump literally"? That whole thing. Again, it goes
yeah.
back to the people who, again, for 2,000 years have taken the Bible or whatever text you want literally. People have said the same thing about, again, Trump or Fuentes or whatever, which is, oh, half of that's just jokes or it's fun, or he's going off this. It's like, we have more than enough evidence to show that young men are completely incapable of separating literal from figurative. They're just going to take that and fucking take it as actual gospel and go with it. And then again, all those little boys run up. So let's make this a little action oriented, Claire. You don't have girls. Obviously, this is the men's problem. I always want to be clear about that. I've got boy, girl, boy. My job is not only to protect her, help her protect herself, all this, but even more so, make these boys not that. And however much I can, Peter Singer style, expand the circle to their groups of friends. How would you, reading this, Manosphere, all this, let's say you had a 12-year-old girl like me, how would you prepare her for the next 6 years?
Well, that's I mean, that is like the 10,000, whatever, how much money, $10,000 question. Like,
knowledge, just to come to these like fun, like what? Yeah.
Well, let me start back from all my interactions with my mom friends who do have daughters. And I think the heartbreak and the thing that really blows your mind is that you cannot instill in a young girl everything that you know as a grown woman. Like you would like to, all the things are like, you're beautiful the way you are, skincare, don't let people get, bully you or steal your thing. And then they end up bullying someone else and getting, put in the line and bully. Like, so on the one hand, you can't do that. God, where do you start? I don't even know. I think a couple things, just keeping people busy and offline. And that is a huge part of it. Just keep them away, at least for a certain extent, off social media, off the computer, and keep them in the real world so that you can remember, like real shit is happening. Bombs are falling on people. People are taking care of dying parents. People are working at the grocery store. That the grocery store is not related to the bombs or the dying parents, just like real people, real shit. And it is a fine line between being like, you should be scared of men versus you are not, the men are not scary because they're not better than you or don't have more power than you. And that's another one that my mom friends and daughters always worry about is girls kind of like to show more skin right now. And a lot of moms I know and dads too, but are like, how do I keep her safe but not shame her at the same time? And I don't have an answer to that.
Because she's going to hit escape velocity, like with her hormones and sex life. And again, I think we talked about this from the This Is Awkward book. Like, how do you make it sex positive and fun? Because those things are all true, but also say, you should be more terrified of this generation of young men than we've been in a very long time.
Yeah. I think showing different kinds of masculinity to boys and girls is important. Like I was thinking again in the doc, one guy's a dad and he brags about how he doesn't change diapers or anything like that. And I was like, that's so funny to me to imply that it's more masculine to be less competent at something, like, yeah. Or like men who would never can't change a light bulb because they've never done manual labor. And like, to me, nothing is more attractive in my husband than when he takes care of his kids and when he fixes things around the house.
What did he fix the other day? And I commented, I said, that's
the oven fan or the stovetop fan.
If that doesn't get you going, I don't know what else to tell you.
Oh, when he cleans the toilet out, not cleans, but like the boys will shit up the toilet and fuck it up and clog it all up. And he'll go up there all mad with the toilet snake. And I'm like, that's my man. Like, he deserves it as a man, but also he can do it. And like, there's another train of thought that if you were a real man, you would just make so much money in crypto that you could just hire maintenance men all the time, but to me, like, so, showing men in caretaking positions. I know this is not just women and boys, boy babysitters, boy nurses, boy, all these things. I think it is just so hard to show young people whose brains are so in the here and now, like the long scope of things. Just the fact that just because someone is young and hot now or valued for this and that now, talk to them in 25 years, but they don't care about that. They're not thinking that way.
No, and nor, by the way, nor should they have to. Like, and you
Yeah.
got to go through that stuff, but you hopefully go through it. And as one of our kids' elementary school teachers says, there is no easier place in their life to fail than
Right.
elementary school. They don't turn in this homework, they forget this page, they fuck around in class, whatever. Of course, we're gonna, deal with it in an age appropriate and setting appropriate place. But it's a lot easier. It's going to be in middle school. This and this. You hope that's how it goes. But control what
Plug
you
them
can
into
control.
different I think plugging them into different social contexts is also important, so you're not always worried about these one group of girls thinks about, have them if they're not sports, art, or whatever the hell it is, out gardening, volunteer work, just something so that you are realizing there's a bigger universe out there than just like the same 12 bitches that you see every day in school, and this is slightly older girls. I think about this a lot. This is more maybe a me thing, but I always said if I had a daughter, or maybe this is best that I didn't, I was like, I would probably make sure that she knows how to enjoy her body before she gets involved with someone else. And because I grew up with conservative parents. My mom more than my dad, actually, which is kind of interesting. My dad was more like religious conservative. My mom was more politically conservative. And, Catholic, right? So I was a good girl for, the appropriate amount of time. And it's inane to hand yourself over to somebody, put yourself in someone's hands and be like, I don't know how this works. You figure it out, and all they know is from stupid movies or like disgusting TikToks or whatever the hell they're watching, like
Yeah.
XTube. So I'm really going off on all kinds of tangents right now. And this is so depends on
But it's an all-encompassing problem. And as we, in my work, we always try to frame it as future positive, hopefully an opportunity. I mean, I feel like I'm grasping at fucking straws on it, but we do have to do it. So it's the whole thing. And this is the thing is like, it's like when we talk about the sandwich generation stuff with our parents, like I don't care what kind of shape they're in. Nobody ages in a linear fashion after 70 or 80 or whatever. These kids are barreling into puberty and all of these things. And
Yeah.
again, it feels like throwing darts sometimes.
There was a while ago on Reddit, teacher Reddit, someone posted, I thought this is very sweet. Someone said, we're always talking shit about this generation of kids. What are they better at than other kids from like earlier generations? And a lot of them said that they are much more accepting than prior generations of kids. There's way less ostracization and sensitivity, which is is heartening. And I'd like to grab onto that, they notice when somebody is being bullied or they are more interested. There's more ways to be a kid, right? You can be into wider, but this is me talking from where I live in my town, like I think for some reason, I think back a lot to, there was a New Yorker article a long time ago about teaching sex ed and like sort of geographically, I think it was more about how kids who have got proper sex ed training are more afraid of getting pregnant than kids who have had no sex ed training. And then you think about like Sarah Palin's kids, who all got pregnant, or, like Lauren Boebert.
Yeah.
And you think about how that's the end of the world, basically. And so it's easy for me to talk about it here in my life, where you can go step on the train and go to a museum or see a million different kinds of things versus like somewhere else where you have nothing to do except maybe, have sex and drink and drive around.
Sure,
And
which is a lot of places.
Yeah.
Totally, Yeah, it's very easy to be like, oh, look, things have gotten better. And it's like, yeah, they have in a lot of ways. And every generation's a little different, and there's going to be whiplash for all of them.
Something that was of interest to me about this article in the documentary is that older women don't exist at all to any of these cohorts. Like they sort of say you can be a nun, a mother, or a whore. But once you are, and it's just very interesting because it is like, there is so much emphasis like on the trad of it all, which I think, younger women who are maybe more gullible may think it's just like a cushy life, a soft life where you get to stay at home and relax and a man pays for things. And then your kid shows up and you realize like there's a lot more to this, than you thought. But yeah, nobody talks about adult or older women in it, which it's not to say as an older woman, I'm like, good, don't talk to me or think about me, please. But it is just, I think it's the vulnerability and that people are talking about a very vulnerable stage of life for a lot of people, which is interesting. No one's, talking about older MAGA women who've turned away, or I don't know. There's one guy in the blogosphere, in the Manosphere doc, who is a big fan of one of the guys they follow, and this man is clearly in a sad stage of life, and it's just like depressing because you're like, these guys think they're so powerful, and they're really like, this kind of goes back to March Madness and gambling. So much of this is just a fucking scam, like this scamming people,
Fucking
which
scam.
is, and
And they
that to
don't
me,
realize how much they're being fucked. And that's the Trump thing too, right? Is
yeah,
people, they're just like, oh, well, if he can do it, he's going to fucking bleed you dry. He couldn't give a less. Andrew Tate doesn't give a fuck about you.
no, and I told Steve about it after I watched the doc. I was like, we need to remember to tell the boys that they are wealthy. And I don't mean that necessarily like money that we have on hand, but like the stability that they have in place, that I hope that they know. You don't need a get rich scheme. Like, you're on a good track right now. Like, you don't need to earn $1,000 a week on crypto or whatever the hell, and or gambling, like the payout of the big whatever the hell you're gonna get like money from. But again, you can't convince kids of that. That's like telling kids. I remember when my mom would be like, find a sweater. When you find a sweater that you like, get it in several colors. And you're like, as a young person, you're like, I want new stuff, and I want to throw away the old stuff constantly. And so, yeah, I don't know how we fix young people's think better.
It's one of those, so many things can be true at once. Like the number of times I've used YouTube to fix something, the ways you can learn incredible things on these relatively niche now, would have had primetime numbers for some of these channels about the most incredible or historic or science, whatever philosophical things. They're amazing. It doesn't even just have to be like, John's crash course stuff or complexity or anything. And at the same time, there's so many just awful things that you can be pulled down. And I was looking at, so on the Apple screen time settings, for the internet ones, there's a few settings, and it's like, everything is cool. I mean, besides like turn Safari off in YouTube, everything is cool, or block adult sites, which I'm sure is just an internal thing they keep updated, or only these allowed sites. And I have historically just done only these allowed sites. And for a long time, it's like pbskids.org, and that's what you get. And I wasn't really struggling, but I had a moment where I was like, the kids are really getting into music. And there's some amazing music teachers. And even their band teacher has like a channel where here's how the songs works, or here's my band. And the kids want to watch that stuff. That's great. I'm like, I would love if the YouTube settings allowed me to say only these channels, right? Like the screen time settings. Because I was like, great, watch all these videos. Watch every chess video you want, You cannot do that.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. And that's such a fucking bummer. Because again, you could unleash just an incredible attack area of learning that is, I felt like when I handed the kids those refurbished iPods, I told you on the Alaska trip, and one of them came out of the bedroom was like, Elvis is amazing. They'd been in there for 10 hours, And you're like, yeah, what could they learn? It'd be amazing, but you can't do that. And then, it's on purpose, because that is not, in a world where technically anything is possible, that is not a complicated thing for them to do, but they could do that. But that's not in the business plan. And that's it's just a fucking bummer. It's a bummer. I don't know.
I have a question for you. In my mind, the idea of masculinity was not even something that really came up. Like, we didn't talk about that when we were younger, about how you are masculine or not masculine. But do you remember being younger, let's say teen, tween, young adult even, and like who or what you thought was like what a man should be, like what a masculine ideal would be?
Besides Ken Griffey Jr., using his body to get anything that was within reasonable striking distance, whether there was a wall there or not. Bruce Springsteen, 100%. In the not afraid to sing about how mad he was about his dad, which turns out complicated because they both carry enormous depression. When he carried himself, wrote songs, still writes songs about things he didn't even know about, but also things he knew intimately, love songs that were not just straight up I love you songs. Also grew up in a lot of rap and hip hop and R&B, things like that. So there's definitely a lot of, sexual type stuff that was, again, I think all, probably not all, but thought at the time, all with a broad brush, thought was like fun and, edgy. It's like the, you see it on the parenting TikToks and shit of, oh, your kids think this is dirty music. Wait till I play this for them, from 1998 or 2000, whatever. And you're like, yeah, wow. Or there's even better ones. They're more specific now, which is, this is what I look like in 1999, and this is what I was listening. So I think all of those, my dad has always had a very, like, not macho, but like, I grew up in the Jersey boardwalk. Like, we get in fights for whatever it need to be, this or that. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. Mine was very sports and music related, I think. I was really lucky to have, I don't think about this part enough, even though it was enormous. So it's my grandfather's, it would be his 101st birthday today. I had two amazing grandfathers, both fought in the war, both incredible human beings and incredible grandfathers and fathers. And on my dad's side, I have one uncle who's the best. He's great. And on my mom's side, I had 5 blood uncles and 4 of them married. My mom's the second oldest and 9. And all the aunts and uncles involved were amazing people. And because she's the second oldest, half of them lived with me growing up. Like most of the uncles, I was very close to them. Those were all my influences. And again, it was a lot of sports stuff, things like that. Again, they all kind of grew up going to Catholic church, but faded out of it, this and that. So it was fairly solid, it was fairly solid in that respect. And again, my exposure to music or sports was when it came on. I didn't have access to Ja Rule's Twitter feed and things like that, which I'm sure there are pros and cons. Like we always talk about, Elon Musk didn't have a Twitter feed, people wouldn't care so much. I was like, great. I'm sure if fucking JFK, was retweeting hot chicks like he was doing in his office, we would have a different memory of it. Great. It was what it is. The point is, I just didn't have access. The things I did have access were like these good guys. And my older brother's 4.5 years older than me. His friends, amazing guys. We're all close. I was very lucky that those were my influences. And I still did fucking dumb shit, but hopefully not like dumb shit, hopefully not this kind of stuff. So different time, but I was lucky. Again, I always had an uncle living over the garage who would put me in my place real fast because his grandfather did, or his dad too, my grandfather, but in a very, I want to say traditional family in the sense of not trad wife, in the sense of we have fucking values, morals, and you fucked up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I felt very lucky in that respect.
Interesting. Yeah, it is just funny how I was between, especially the MAGA article, I was like, what is this like fever pit fear and hatred of women coming from? Because I was like, we haven't.
I think part of it's the unknown.
Yeah.
They don't hang out with women. They have no idea how to talk to them. And again, all this is on purpose, and then it becomes circuitous, right? Where you have no exposure, you have no idea how to talk to them. You're scared of them.
Yeah.
You're scared of sex because you haven't had sex. You're told both to masturbate all the time, but not at all. No, it's just, it's fear, it's insecurities, which again, these influencers, if you want to call them that, just prey on and prey on and prey on. To you're like, I'm doing all the things right. Isn't this all the things I'm supposed to do? Tell the lady who lives with me to go clean shit. I don't know how else.
Why doesn't bitch like me?
Exactly.
I guess if I chose to take some heart from the piece, I was like, I wonder if this is all an implication that women are closer to gaining more footholds in leadership and power. And so this is the pre-backlash, like the terror of it. Cause I'm like, I don't see what they're so scared of. Cause like we're still.
Right. Is it because we're on the cusp? And that's what I mentioned to somebody, after the Virginia election, which is something that happens every 6 months. I feel like at this point, they're more, I don't remember if it's just the House or the full legislature, the full General Assembly, but they're more democratically elected women than there were total Republicans elected, I think. And you can like, not scoff at it, but you can kind of shrug it off or be like, oh, that's cool. But also go, we've done that before. What does this actually mean? And now you look up after 60 days of legislature and go, they've passed more pro-worker, pro-family, pro-women things. We spit out 4 constitutional amendments about civil rights in 48 hours. And you go, well, maybe that's one thing that fucking happens. And guess what, guys? There's nothing to be scared of in there.
Give us a chance. We might not be that bad.
Yeah, it could just be better for everyone.
All right. I want to switch real quick before we get going and do a quick, like, kind of game sort of thing, if you have time, or I can save it for just right now. This is not time.
I just want to finish up by reminding everyone that you didn't fill out a women's bracket because you didn't make time for it.
Women's sports are boring and not real, and they only score, like, what, 8 points a game? So, anyway.
Here's the thing. I did not look at any of our notes because Claire sent me a message after I sent her the notes thing, and she said, I want to play a game. I put an image in there. Don't look at it. I was like, well, I can't. Then I have no idea what else there is.
Okay. So this made me laugh because one of the moms in my 8th grade mom group sent this meme out from Instagram, and it says trending slang everyone is using in 2026. And it made me sad for her because I was like, this slang is all incredibly old already. And so I was like, nothing is more mom than being, it makes me think of like Marge Simpson being like, every Simpson dance now, when she like is just so lame.
Fucking justice for Marge, man. She's
I
sitting right
know, I know.
God, the shit she had to put up
Making
with.
homemade Pepsi. But I wanted to quiz you on some of these because I wanted to know how much of these you know.
You want me to look at it, or are you going to quiz me out loud here?
No, I'm going to tell you something. Okay, so if I'm complaining about Paul being Delulu, what does Delulu mean? If my son is being Delulu, what does that mean?
I don't really know that one. Is that delusional?
Yeah. Okay. So
That seems like an easy one. You're starting me off.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me what the difference is between something being cooked and somebody who ate.
Side note, I actually sent a text message to Oliver last night because Willow and I were talking about something, and I said, I need you to explain to me the difference between cooked and cook. And I will send you the screenshot. But he was like, oh boy, here we go. My understanding is, wait, let me cook, or I cooked, or he cooked is positive. But Claire is cooked, or I am cooked is a net negative. That's my understanding of it. Is that correct?
I would say so. Yes.
Okay.
But, and as to throw something else in there, if we were to say, let you cook, let Quinn cook, what does that mean?
See, that feels like a real in-betweener. I don't know. Is that mean let me burn for my, like he fuck around and find out? Or is that, like NBA Jam, he's on fire?
It means let him do his thing. Like, you may not understand it, but he knows what he's doing. So let him cook. So yeah, that is what let them cook means. Like, let them continue. It might turn out good. That's what this meme says. But if I said you ate, like Dana really ate with that script she wrote, what does that mean?
I assume that means successful, right? Like she did well. Is that what it means?
Yeah. Now, I just want to note that, like, most of these things, if anyone wants to get ahead on slang, just watch Drag Race, current Drag Race, or talk to a gay person for more than a few minutes, because most slang comes from gay culture, African-American young gay culture, I would say. So a lot of this, like, for instance, if I was like, oh, Quinn, your shirt is giving Eddie Vedder 1990s, what does giving mean?
I assume it means, you're already laughing at me, like a positive representation of the subject you're giving. Here's my problem, is I've heard in the past someone say, ooh, Claire is giving today. Giving what?
No, that's not how that's used. You're giving.
I don't feel like I've heard that.
It evokes. You're evoking. And it usually means something I would say, well, I don't want to say normally stylish or not, but yeah, you're just saying, oh, you're giving, I don't know what. Like,
used in a derogatory way, like you're giving hobo?
I would say it's, yeah. But I would say on its own, it's a neutral term, but it's just a way of being like, oh, you look like blank. You know, you're like, it's similar to.
So the subject is really where the judging is.
Yes. And also I would say serving. If you are serving, that's a look. You're turning a look good, but you're like you.
Is it like Blue Steel? Is Blue Steel serving?
No, we're kind of losing now. This yacht in the meme, I wish it would be really funny. I just want to note that from the gay culture right now, and this is not for you to know, cunt is, and you can believe that if you want, but cunt is positive now. And it made me laugh because my friend's daughter referred to someone as cunty, and my friend's daughter is 13. And I was like, I understand the evolution of the term, and I'm glad that, we are accepting.
It's turned a corner. But I was under strict instructions. We're not using it.
you should adhere to that. Don't. And I just think, I'm like, you know what? I was like, you shouldn't be allowed to say cunt until you have owned and operated one, or you have been oppressed long and hard enough by the system. I'm like, no, young people, it's like smoking cigarettes. Don't do it, until you're a certain age. A lot of this is just so online stuff, or not even new. If I said bet, like you said, fill out this bracket, and I said bet, what is that?
Does that mean I agree? I thought it meant I agree.
Yeah, it means yes, but that's not current, Now, have you talked about, the Roman Empire thing? Have you, like...
No, I'm aware. Is that just things people are interested in?
So it was a couple of years ago, as far as I know, that someone online was like, did a thing about, do you know how often the average straight white man or the average straight man thinks about the Roman Empire? And I guess like someone found a sample size of men who think a lot about the Roman Empire and perhaps like implications today. But it became mainstreamed enough that it's like, when you are always focused on something or it's always bothering you, that's your Roman Empire. So it's a really...
What's your Roman Empire, Claire?
Oh my God. I don't... Dying parents, like aging parents. That's real fun shit. I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that one. Nothing good. Like I was telling my friends, I was like, Steve's Roman Empire for a long time was AI, because he was always worried about AI, and now it's here. And I think he needs like a new Roman
Can I
Empire.
pause everything? Steve's commercial, so great.
Thank you.
It was so cute. I was like, what's he going to do with the penny? The whole thing was so great.
I gave birth to the star, and
how is the star taking all of this? Like,
he
stride?
Well, he gets him as a day of school to shoot this commercial for Field Notes. This is what Quinn is referring to.
Yep.
Link to it in the show notes.
In the show notes, 100%.
In the role he was born to play as a boy who likes to chew gum. And he gets him as a day of school, but Steve showed the teacher the finished product, and the teacher said, this is great. Can I show it to his classmates in class? And Steve said yes. And I guess all the kids were excited and calling him a celebrity, and they want to make his posse, like his entourage now. And one kid, Jack O, said his job will be to hug James when he's feeling sad. So he's doing well.
That's the type of masculinity I'm signed up for,
Yeah.
Anyways,
yeah.
I saw it and I was like, this is adorable.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
When
Most things are so obvious. Like if someone crashes out, what does that mean?
Gets upset?
Like a public meltdown, like losing control over something. Yeah.
Okay. You can't crash out. Like I can't say, Oliver, go crash out in your room by yourself. I don't want that around here.
No. Crashing out is like... A funny example is that going back to my college boyfriend, who I don't know why.
You're real fluent today.
I told my kids once, and this was more of like a cautionary tale about how I played miniature golf with him once, and I beat him, and he reacted poorly and had a little temper tantrum. And I told my boys that story as an example of what not to do. And I referred to this boyfriend like sometime later, and my son said, oh yeah, is that the guy who crashed out over the miniature golf game? I was like, exactly.
Okay, that's a good example. All right, I will keep that in mind as my dictionary definition.
Yeah, and then a lot of these otherwise are like not... I feel like, touch grass, you know what that means. I feel like we've talked about that, right?
Come on. Staying in a hotel made of plants.
Right. Mid, you know what that is, right?
Average, right?
Yeah.
Grades.
Underwhelming, I would say. One I don't say, but I've seen it online, say less. You know that one?
I do. Yeah, like I'm already convinced.
Yeah, and it means got it, basically, or say no more. Anyway, the other one is these you'll see, but like you'll be, again, it'll make you sad, because you'll be like, one is like main, oh, this is so AI, I just realized it says main character energy. Yeah, take a look at this later, but it'll make you both feel like on top of your game, but also being like, I'm sad for anyone who thinks this is like new information. I don't again, it's every Simpson dance that once.
I'm coaching Henry's 9-10 team, and I knew where I was being egregious about it, but we were talking about the positions on the baseball field at their first practice the other night. And I was saying how in a score, this is obviously so far beyond a bunch of 9-10-year-olds, how when you take a score in a scorebook, each of the positions has a number. That I had made a 6-7 joke, and they were like upset, not because I was like invading their territory, more that they were like, no one has done that. And like, why would you even say that? Is that even funny?
Yeah. Have you heard of this new show, Friends, that just came out? By the way, speaking of ESPN, do you know there's a guy on Vanderbilt whose name is Chandler Bing? and his parents did not. And he's black, or I presume he's black. He's not white, and I know that most like black Friends was a white thing, so I can absolutely believe that there's like a black person who's. I just happened to name my kid Jerry Seinfeld. It's not my fault, but it's horrible.
I saw a guy who was playing on a team last night, a whiter Latino guy who was very tall, and they showed his nicknames. One was Cream Abdul-Jabbar, and the other one was Milk Chamberlain, which
You know what? Something crazy? I have a friend who was an orphan by the time she got to college, and her stepmother, she had to get independence from her stepmother, and her stepmother had been Wilt Chamberlain, one of his, 100-point
one
hundreds of
them,
women.
yeah, on the list.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
I'm excited to
Yeah.
watch this. Excited to watch this documentary.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. This guy's the way, I guess other people know this documentarian more. I don't know him that well. He has a very interesting touch where he is like kind of neutral, sort of skeptical. And these guys they know.
Are these guys self-aware? Are they aware of what's
like sometimes? I mean, they'll say something like, I'm not monogamous, but my wife is. And he'll be like, what does that mean? And then the guy will be like, uh-oh, you're trying to get me in trouble. It's like, no, bitch, you got yourself in trouble,
Well, just tell me what it means.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that. Or he'll be like, you don't really mean that. And then these guys get really defensive. And, again, to me, I don't think about masculinity that much, but there's nothing really that masculine, like walking around with a camera all the time like this. Like, that is not a thing that to me is that's what a real man does. What does a real man do? That's not that like that. But again, I'm on the line between mom and none for these guys. So I know my opinion doesn't matter, and that's fine. But I ate Paul real yelling at last night because we were on the way home from dinner with our friends. I paid for dinner. I just bought him a new box of clothes. And my friend and I were talking in the car, and I started laughing loud about something stupid. And Paul was like, Mom, it's not that deep, or whatever, another slang. And I was like, are you telling me not to laugh hard? And then later, I did a drive-by at bedtime. I was like, you know what?
Perfect.
Like, I do everything for you, and I get nothing. And I was like, I'm allowed to laugh, and I'm allowed to have a good time.
He just brushed his teeth.
He was watching TV with Steve, but I'm sure really I made him.
That's a semi-justified drive-by, though. That's pretty good. I'll give you points for that one.
And I allow for teenagerdom. I understand, which is a picture of me trying to take a picture with Paul, and he walked off camera. So there's just a picture of me, but there is a fine line between you can be a teenager up until the point where you are actually really fucking treating me like shit, you can treat me like shit to a certain level. I don't know exactly where the level is, but we find different times.
Not to call him out here, but does Steve defend you if that happens, if he overhears it?
Yeah, he said, how could you do that to your mother? It's nothing. That, to me, is what a real man does, is defend his wife against his mean-ass kid.
Oh, yeah, I will.
Actually.
And I try to remind my children that I'm the bad cop all the time, and that mom's a good cop, and they have no business whatsoever at ever giving her shit about anything.
My friend Christine and I were joking we were sort of clowning someone online who was talking about how she and her husband were texting about the great sex they'd had the night before. And I was like, I would never text my husband about sex we'd had. And we were saying these are the things we would find hot if our husband texted us. If he said, I'm taking the boys somewhere awesome for hours. And then she had a wet, a liquid emoji and not eggplant emoji. And I said, Highness, I'll put them to bed. And emoji. That's the kind of stuff that you really want to hear.
Head to notrightnow.show for more, or send us feedback, questions, horror stories, doxing, whatever it is, at questions@notrightnow.show.